Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. We have got a by-election roundup and it's coming to you on the Friday when the results came out, so that's not bad. Last couple of weeks of course have been a bit later on a Sunday and a Monday, but the results are all out. I'm ready to go, so here they are. We'll get straight into it now. Breaking from tradition, I'm not going to scroll down and do these ones in order as they appear on the screen. I'm actually going to go down. We're going to look at the Scottish ones first because, frankly, guys, like I've said, I don't feel like I'm all that clued up on Scotland really to actually have much to comment on. Really, I can't, like I do with the English stuff. I don't think I can opine quite as much because I'm just not as knowledgeable about what's going on in Scotland. Certainly not at a local level. So, look, both of them, both two wards in Highland Council, right up at the top of Scotland, I believe. The independent gain, or an independent gained off the Green Party in Cowell and Mallaig. Sorry, that's going to be badly pronounced. The Greens didn't stand, having stood here unopposed, I believe, previously. Didn't stand a candidate in this election. Independents, 36%, and second place, fairly close behind, another independent or a local party or something there. All the main parties really in the dust. Lib Dems are closest on 17%. So, look, I have no idea who that independent is, what their politics are. Not sure. But there you go. The Greens lost one, didn't even stand a candidate. Independents gain in Highland. The other Highland ward goes to the Liberal Democrats, who make a notional gain off of the SNP. And again, not too much to say. Look, Lib Dems fairly comfortable, 38.8%. Looks like the Independents again with a fairly strong second place at 28%. SNP declined down 10.6 points to just under 15. And that's really all to say. I did mention last week, keep an eye on Reform, didn't I? Well, they didn't really trouble the scorers. They came in at 13%. I hadn't really thought when I didn't really look at the Council Highland. It is right up there at the top, north of Scotland, which is very Lib Dem and SNP. So probably not really expecting Reform to do too much. But look, they did beat the Conservatives and they beat Labour pretty comfortably, but obviously nowhere near winning the ward themselves. So that's Scotland. One win for the Independents and one win for the Liberal Democrats up there. So let's move on to the councils that are in England. All the rest of these in England, obviously, one of them happened on the Wednesday, which was Breckland in Norfolk, I think, Norfolk or Suffolk. We're going to look at all of these. So we're going to start, though, in Kent. So Rolvenden and Tenterden West, Ashford Council. Now, remember, Reform did very well in Kent in the county council elections in May. They won the council very comfortably. Conservatives got battered. But this was a Green defence. So I think I said last week, be interested to see what happens here. Greens, generally speaking, do quite well when they're defending, when they actually stand a candidate, of course, that is. So what happened? Well, the Greens they held on with a reduced vote share of just almost 17 points down on what they achieved in 2023 when this seat was last voted on. So they hold on. Reform did come in a very, very close second, though, 31.6% from a standing start. Have not stood in this ward before. As you can see, a very, very slender majority for the Greens, only 5%, 35 votes in it. But of course, first past the post, that is enough to win. And some will say that's the main story, but I think there's a deeper story here. And it's mirrored in Manchester, which we're going to look at in a minute. The Conservative Party standing here down 10 points and relegated into third place behind Reform by, around about 4%, just under 4%. This was a Conservative ward in Ashford until 2018 when it was won by a independent, and then that independent then switched to represent the Green Party. So this was formerly a Conservative voting ward in a county that has historically been very Conservative voting. Now, as I said, Conservatives took a pounding at the ballot box in May in Kent. And I think this is quite significant that obviously the Greens won, and some will say that's the main story, and they're right, of course. But the Tories being relegated to third place and Reform being the main opposition now to the Greens in this ward, and it's only one ward, of course, but what we can draw from that, I think, is the Conservatives are slowly but surely just being replaced as this party of the right wing in British politics. Now, look, it's not a huge gap. You can tell that the two bars for Reform and for the Tories are a similar size, but Reform did manage to beat them by, like I say, 4% or so, a slender margin, admittedly. But I think it's illustrative of the Conservatives not being able to hold their own and gradually just slipping further and further down the rankings. You know, they've lost, uh, like I say, they've lost the support in Kent, in wider Kent, as we saw in the county council elections. You know, lost a load of seats, and now they're failing to finish even in second place against the main competitors. So I think that's illustrative. And if we go down to Manchester next, so Woodhouse Park ward in Manchester, basically the same story. So Greens again defending, Greens again hold on with again a 15-point reduction. So two Green defences, but with reduced vote share for them. Partly, I think, maybe because more party standing, but you know, still, thought I mentioned that. But again, now I think this is worse, or more illustrative. The same point I was making about the Tories earlier. Now for Labour. Now this is in Manchester, as you can see, it's Manchester City Council. Remember what I've been saying in the videos in the last few weeks about how Labour, in terms of parliamentary polling and mapping, their representation is shrinking away into the inner cities. And that's kind of, when you look at the nowcast map now, that's all you see. The red really is only inner city areas: Manchester, Liverpool, Birmingham, London. Well, this is in Manchester City, and here, the same as the Conservative Party in Kent, Labour have been relegated to third place by Reform. So here, Labour down just under 13 points, down to 20% of the vote, and Reform straight in at almost 30% of the vote. Again, standing start, straight in at 30% of the vote. More of a margin here for the Greens of 14%, so a much more comfortable victory for them than what they got in Kent. But that was to be expected, mind you, bearing in mind, you know, Manchester, generally speaking, is, as most cities are in all fairness, generally considered to be more left-wing voting. You know, I had this down as a Green hold, so I'm not surprised at that. But I am very surprised to see Reform finishing in second place, ahead of Labour, and not by all that much. Like I said, at least in Kent for the Conservatives, there wasn't too much in it. I mean, you know, it was only 4% or so. But here, you're looking at a gap of almost 10%. Which is significant. I really think that's significant. I think it really shows how much trouble Labour is in. That their support is shrinking even in these inner city areas, and now Reform in this ward becoming the main competitors to the Greens, who obviously held it and held on in this election. So I think the story really is the two main parties, legacy main parties, Conservatives and Labour, they're fading. They're really fading away at a rapid rate of knots. The Conservatives are being replaced in their heartlands by Reform, and in Labour's former heartlands, they're being replaced. Well, not quite replaced, but you know, the Greens are running them close in a lot of city areas now, and not only are Labour getting run for the win by the Greens, Reform are even beating Labour in those areas as well. So they just get, both these two parties are getting squeezed out. I think they've both lost identity, both lost the concept of who they're trying to get to vote for them, and it's punishing them, both of them. I think this slide away from being ideologically based, and I don't mean that as in base ideology. I mean like as in the party is actually based in an ideology. They're more floating these days, and it has been this way for a long time. You know, parties, they do all these focus groups and, you know, research, but the purpose of the research should be, surely, or you get a focus group, right? Go and find out what this demographic believes. Okay, well, we found out this demographic X believes this. Well, our party believes Y. We've got to convince that demographic that we're right. But actually, focus groups and research and all this for main political parties, big political parties, the Lib Dems and the Tories in particular, has become, right, demographic X believes Y. We'll just say we believe Y to get them to vote for us. And then nothing actually changes, because the people who say these things don't actually believe it. The parties don't actually believe in it. And I think we saw that with the Conservatives in their last period in government, with all these things about immigration. We'll say we're going to reduce immigration because that's what demographic X says they want to hear. It never happened because the Conservative Party fundamentally didn't believe that was the right thing to do. So I went on a bit of a tangent there, but I think that's kind of what we're seeing. These two main parties, they no longer have this foundation in an ideology. They have no foundation in a theory or a political foundation that they can go and espouse and convince people. They try and mirror people's opinions back to them to get their votes. So I think that's what's happening, and I think it's big trouble for Labour and the Conservative Party. Last one, like I said, on a bit of a tangent there, but this one, as I expected, Thetford Castle ward in Breckland Borough or District Council, which I believe is in Norfolk, possibly Suffolk. Reform gain pretty handsomely, a majority of 20%, so a pretty crushing victory, really. Reform, again, standing start, not stood here before, straight up to almost 50% of the vote, which is an incredible result for them. And again, Labour defending. Labour did here finish second, but reduced by, again, look, we've become used to seeing these big drops for Labour, down 23 points almost. Again, very punishing for them. Conservatives also down almost 20 points. I mean, that's what I mean. The two main parties are just getting absolutely squeezed out everywhere you look, really. Liberal Democrats didn't stand here before, went straight in at about 11%. So look, that's all the by-elections for this week. Obviously, it had a long tangent there about what's going on with the two main parties. In my opinion, of course, let me know in the comments if you agree or if you think differently. Please do let me know in the comments. I do always enjoy hearing your perspectives on that. So look, I mean, really, a decent night for the Greens actually is something I haven't really mentioned. They had 3 defences. They didn't even bother standing in one, and the 2 that they did defend, they successfully defended with a reduced vote share, mind you, but they did hold on. Reform with a very good win here in Breckland, and like I say, Labour and Conservative really just getting squeezed out across the country, really, which is quite alarming for their supporters. Before we wrap up, I do want to very quickly just look at some, not really news, just some polling that came out in the last few days, which I think we might as well, I can't really do a whole video on it, so I might as well stick it on at the end here. So we're going to have a look at some polling things that have come out in the last couple of days. So here is the Westminster voting intention poll of poll. Do you know, I still actually don't know how this particular graph chart is made. I have emailed election maps. This is, I should have said, I always forget. Everything you see on your screen so far, the by-election results, this chart is courtesy of Election Maps UK. Very good website, all free. Electionmaps.uk, you can go and check it out for yourself. I emailed them a long time ago when I first started this channel because I thought I should do some due diligence and be able to tell you how this chart is made. I actually don't know if this is a poll of polls or if they have some other polling that goes on in the background. I'm not sure. I think it's a poll of polls. But anyway, that's the assumption I'm going on. The interesting thing I wanted to mention is that there has been a little bit of narrowing of the polls has happened in the last couple of weeks. You can see there that reform trajectory just starting to point down towards the earth slightly, and interestingly the Labour line starting to point skyward slightly. Now it's still pretty negligible. 20.6 as of the 25th of September, and actually I don't know what the date difference is there. 21.4 whenever that latest tick is. Reform down from 31 down to 30.3, so we're only talking less than 1% as the poll of polls goes, but I just thought I'd just mention it because generally the trajectory, as you can see from after the local elections in May here in particular, the trajectory has been very much Reform astronomically going up and Labour kind of falling off pretty strongly. I think this is probably a bit of an aberration. A little bit of this has happened as well since, in fact, we could probably look at it on the screen here. In fact, it doesn't go back to the general election last year, but there have been periods of time where Reform go through these very strong, like here, very strong increases in their polling. Then it flattens off for a bit, and they sort of gradually tick up, and then it explodes up again. Look, it might just be an aberration. We're gonna have a look at the poll that I think has probably caused this change as well. In fact, let's go and have a look at that right now. So here it is. This is so poll came out a couple of days ago now, the 24th of September. Yep. More in Common poll showed Reform slipping back 3%, with Labour increasing 3%, so reducing the gap to also 3% now between the two of them, according to More in Common. Now, like I say, I think this is a bit of an aberration of a poll. It seems like the outlier at the moment, based off others. Obviously, we'll see what other polls come in the next few days. Maybe it is a trend, but I can't think of any reason why that would necessarily be happening. The Conservatives also increasing 2% there, according to the More in Common poll as well. Let me know what you think of that. Like I say, I think it's a bit of an outlier at the moment, but we will wait and see. And like I say, this has happened since the general election last year, when Reform's sort of stratospheric momentum really started. There have been these periods of time where they've slipped back a little bit for a few weeks, and then slowly but surely start building their way back up again. Yeah, like I say, let me know what you think. But to counter this More in Common poll that shows Reform slipping back, this morning, a YouGov MRP poll dropped, which showed Reform winning 311 seats at a general election. Now, this is MRP polling. It's the new or a newish polling methodology that tends to be fairly accurate. So YouGov's MRP poll has Reform winning 311 seats if a general election were to be held today. Labour with it's got to be a historic collapse, down by 276 seats to 144. Liberal Democrats increased by about 6. Conservatives down again another 76. That is tragic for the Conservatives. Like I say, finished party. SNP, another of the big winners, up 28, and Greens increasing 3. That'd be at the expense of Labour. Applied up to, others down 2. So look, that's interesting. We'll get the image on the screen here. I don't know how well you can really see it, to be honest with you. Look, that's what the map looks like. Again, I don't know how well the colours are going to show for you there, but essentially they've used blue for Reform and a darker blue for the Conservatives. But you can see very much Reform the favourites to form the next government, really. Now, of course, 311 would leave Reform just short of a majority. They would need some help to get over the line in order to actually get some legislation through. So that would be very, very interesting, because look, they could go in with the Conservatives, but the Conservatives could hold them completely hostage, couldn't they? They could block all the legislation that Reform says they need to get through in order to reform, literally, the country back to how, I think really back to how it was is generally the aim of a lot of Reform's policy, repealing a lot of the stuff back to 1997. The Conservatives could block all that if they were in some sort of a coalition with them. So look, it'd be very interesting if this were to happen. But of course, we're a long way out from a general election at the moment, in theory. So a lot can happen between now and then. And look, of course, Reform are the party with all the momentum. It's been that way for over a year now. I have to say, I thought they would have plateaued off a bit, but they keep going. We'll see how long they can keep going in that direction. So thank you everybody for watching. Thought we'd just cover a little bit of polling news at the end there. Please do like the video and subscribe to the channel for more coverage of by-elections and things. Like I say, I do news videos when I can, when I think there's some significant news to speak about that's relevant to the channel. So for all of that, please do hit subscribe, and of course the notification bell, so you know when a video comes out. And as always, please do get involved in the comments. As I say, I like to see your perspective. I like to see the debates that happen in the comments as well. Keep it friendly, of course. Thank you everybody for watching, and I will see you on the next one.